Their answer, in a 5-4 decision upholding his ban on people from 7 countries entering the U.S., was a definite no. Even though that travel ban evolved from a blanket campaign call for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the U.S., the court ruled the text of the order Trump signed does not specifically call out Muslims. So, they're saying, it's not a Muslim ban. Chief Justice John Roberts, writing for the majority, said the words Trump said out loud didn't matter as much as the ones he put his signature to. Plaintiffs argue that this president's words strike at fundamental standards of respect and tolerance, in violation of our constitutional tradition, Roberts wrote. But the issue before us is not whether to denounce the statements. It is instead the significance of those statements in reviewing a presidential directive, neutral on its face, addressing a matter within the core of executive responsibility. In doing so, we must consider not only the statements of a particular president, but also the authority of the presidency itself. Trump's words have often gotten in his way as president, when he's been found to lie, repeatedly misrepresent facts, bully both political allies and opponents, make provocative declarations, tempt nuclear war, insult world leaders and more. He's drawn repeated questions about whether he's acting out Richard Nixon's madman theory of provocation and unpredictability with a method actor's dedication. Trump aides have long said his tweets have been given too much scrutiny, and specific troublesome words of his have been entirely dismissed. The infamous Access Hollywood tape, remember, was written off by Trump himself as locker room talk. He didn't really mean that. Selena Zito had that much-discussed Atlantic piece after the 2016 election in which she pointed out his supporters take him seriously rather than literally. There's no indication that's changed among his supporters. An excellent piece by Jeremy Peters in the New York Times canvassed Trump supporters and found attacks on the president for his statements only make his supporters dig in deeper. People expect him to embellish and attack. You're either in on it or not. These aren't legal questions for the court to interpret, but they are certainly important for Americans to consider. The court's majority made clear they were not passing judgment on his statements, but rather his order. Justice Anthony Kennedy agreed with Roberts' decision but wrote on his own in the case, suggesting Trump's words weren't okay. There are numerous instances in which the statements and actions of government officials are not subject to judicial scrutiny or intervention, Kennedy wrote. That does not mean those officials are free to disregard the Constitution and the rights it proclaims and protects. The problem is Trump very much wants his word to be respected. When announced he would be pulling the U.S. out of the international agreement to curb Iran's nuclear program, he made clear that he was making good on a campaign promise. The United States no longer makes empty threats, he said. When I make promises, I keep them, but he's not above changing his mind about things. He went from calling North Korea's Kim Jong-un "Little Rocket Man" and seeming to promise military action against him to shaking the guy's hand and agreeing to try to disarm the Korean peninsula. He declared that North Korea is no longer a nuclear threat, even though any kind of detailed and specific agreement is a long way off. It will be interesting to see if another polling organization asks whether the travel ban is targeted at Muslims and whether the public agrees with the Supreme Court that it now isn't, or whether they remember that Trump once called for a stop on all Muslims entering the country.